I'll be the first to admit I am a lazy Total War player. I often forget to use half the mechanics or simply ignore them. For example, I pretty much never look at my character's items, so whatever gets auto-assigned there first is going to be there for the rest of the campaign. And hell, I did this Scarbrand campaign video where I tried to survive with no settlements, and I completely forgot to use this button up the top. I forgot it existed, it kind of blends into the UI, so I went this entire run without using this supposedly incredibly important mechanic. So that got me wondering, how important are any of these mechanics really? From summoning the Elector Counts, to Nurgle Cauldrons, to High Elf political intrigue. Does any of it really matter? So that's what I'm going to look to find out by doing a campaign where I use no unique faction mechanics, no army buffing skill points, no items, and I research no technology. I'm going bare bones Total War. Now, when deciding a faction to do this with, I tried to pick one that had a unique mechanic that was quite seemingly essential to them, that they'd be quite disadvantaging themselves by not using. So I went with the Vampire Counts and your boy Stone Cold Steve Mannfred, but before I do this mechanicless campaign, I need something to compare it to. So I'm going to do a normal version using all the mechanics and all the usual stuff, and we'll see how far we can get and how well it goes in maybe about 50 turns. So let's skim through that first of all. So Old Manny starts down in the Sandylands. We'll proceed to take out this little first army. I do fight that battle to get the best results and then proceed on to take the first settlement and then on to the first province. And before you know it, I'm breathing down old Volkmar's neck. He's the first big enemy we have to deal with, and he's on his way to having 2 full stacks. So I do what any great general of history does, and I raise an army of zombies, using the pretty essential feeling Vampire Counts mechanic of Raise Dead, which allows me to build a nice big army of zombies very quickly, which is going to let me push on Volkmar, even though I still am apparently going to lose. But I can fight it to get the win, although it's not going to be completely dairy-free. I did use my zombie army to distract and draw the enemy army to the farthest side of the settlement, while my other army went in and stole the victory objective. This allowed me to take out one of Volkmar's armies nice and easily, while the other one was just up north, which left the Plain of Tusker's settlement to the south free for the taking. And it's around this time that Tomb Bitch Cetra came and declared war on us, so we've now got him to worry about while still trying to deal with Volkmar. He pretty much straight away came and besieged my main settlement of Casabar, but I sent Mannfred all the way back over there to get him, thankfully before he decided to attack. This allowed us to get a victory, although I did have to fight it so that it wasn't a complete disaster. And at this point, Mannfred's army is alright. I got some okay units, got some Crypt Horrors, got the Vargeist, got a couple of Graveguard, got my White King hero, and then otherwise it's just bogging everything down with the chaff. Needless to say, we beat away Cetra's Bone Boys, and Casabar was saved. Back on the other side of the kingdom, Volkmar wasn't up to much. He didn't seem to be retaliating, so I just kind of played it safe on that side for now. And as Mannfred was already over in the Tomb King's land and we just took out one of their big armies, I decided to push on them, taking one of their settlements and then pushing on Khemri itself. I was going to try and get them done quick. Another vampire mechanic I made use of here, the Bloodline system. I'm going to get this one that increases replenishment, as that's something I've been trying to improve with skill points and technology, get my replenishment as good as possible. Mannfred's plan comes to a halt though, as there is a big Khemri army now sat there. They can obviously raise armies very quickly, so I need to fall back and replenish, and why not recruit myself some crossbowmen. Back over in the west, Volkmar is finally looking like he might do something, but this is where good old Raise Dead comes in handy, as we can get units nice and quick and nice and cheap. I've got the reduction cost to zombies, so they're very, very cheap. But you see me bringing Mannfred back over here. I decided to abandon my push on Khemri for now to focus on one target rather than trying to do both at the same time. I need both of my armies on one target really to get rid of them, so I'm going after Volkmar first. He tried to attack my Strigoi zombie army, which I left outside the settlement trying to ambush. I don't like my chances here though, so I try to retreat and see what happens, and luckily he doesn't pursue me any further, and thus he's now stood in my vampire corrupted lands taking attrition, and he's now kind of separated from his other army, freeing me up to come after him on the next turn with both of my armies. And he's in forced march, so it's worked out beautifully here. I'm able to take out Volkmar's big boy army nice and easy. I then try to pursue his second army, but it does a runner into the desert, leaving his settlement undefended, which I do go and take, and that other army does eventually get killed by his other enemy up there, the Rakaf dynasty, those other Tomb King boys, and thus Volkmar and the Cult of Sigmar are no more. So one big enemy down, one to go. That other big enemy, though, is of course coming and taking back the settlements I took from it, but that's fine. That was expected when I ran away and left those settlements undefended, of course. As long as they're not taking any of my first province, we're all good. I then rush my 2 armies back over to this side before the Khemri start causing problems. I do catch them with an army and a settlement with a small garrison though, push on it with my 2 armies, and we take care of that army and that settlement. That's now ours once again. Their other army, though, is just stood in the middle of nowhere, but it is potentially going to attack one of my less defended settlements. So once again, good old Raise Dead comes in handy, as I'm able to quickly raise a force there to try and help defend it. I'm going to grab as much as I can to hopefully allow it to protect it, maybe to get an auto-resolve win. But alas, it doesn't really help that much. Gives me a close defeat, which I don't think I'd be able to win if I fight it. They got some Nehekara warriors, they got a lot of spearmen. Don't think I really have the manpower to do this, so I'm just going to take the close defeat on the chin. And if they take it, they take it. I'll deal with it. But luckily, they've only sacked it, which then leaves their army stood in the open in force march somehow. Not quite sure how they ended up in force march after attacking a settlement, but whatever. They're dead now. We took care of them. 2 big Tomb King's armies out the way. Nice. We're now free to claim the land that they owe us. But we're not entirely done with Tomb Kings yet, apparently, as the Rakaf dynasty has now declared war on us. Fun. I'm going to ignore that for now, though, and keep pushing on the Khemri to get rid of them, otherwise they're just going to come back strong again. So I take back Khemri, I come and take out Numas to the north, and that's 3 of the 4 settlements in this province taken, just 1 more left. But in this time, the Rakaf dynasty have made their move, and they're now besieging Sudenburg, which means I need to bring Manny back to come and sort that out, but I trust in my Strigoi boy to be able to finish the Khemri off, and then we should be looking good. Sadly, though, the Rakaf bastards besiege my settlement before Mannfred arrives. Luckily, though, again, they only sack it and run away, so we're able to keep the settlement, thankfully. And after a little bit of faff with some small Tomb King's Khemri armies, my Strigoi army is able to go and take out the final settlement of the Khemri. Although I am just going to sack it this time around because I kind of need the money. I've got like 400 in the bank because I spent it all on Raise Dead trying to win the fights over this side. But on the next turn, I'm going to take it out and finally get rid of the goddamn Khemri. So that's the 2 big starting enemies we had to deal with, finally taken out. We're at about turn 35. We got a pretty nice little empire, 3 provinces. Although they're not terribly well developed, I have expanded very quickly, and thus money has been a bit of a problem. But I'm going to keep going to turn 50 and see how much land we can take with this normal style playthrough. So next I set my sights on those damn dirty Rakaf dynasty bone boys, and well, quite frankly, they didn't put up much of a fight, and we were able to take them out fairly comfortably, fairly easily, and expanded our kingdom that little bit more. I noticed now, though, that the French were becoming a bit of a problem with non-stop rioting all over this area, and I kind of become friendly with Archon as well, who's on that west coast there. So I worked together with him to get rid of the Bretonnians from this area. There's 2 factions, one of them being Rapons, of course. And you can see now in my army, I've got some Graveguard great weapons, I've got some cavalry, some Blood Knights, some Hex Wraiths. That's all from Raise Dead. So I've got those powerful units because, as I say, my provinces aren't terribly developed and I can't recruit those units yet. It's all been Raise Dead. But I sacked that place just there and ended up in a fight with Rapons herself, who decided to come after me, but she was no match for my massive zombies, which I'd been putting quite a lot into in terms of tech and skill points and stuff. They got that 20% physical resistance, they're really cheap, they got some extra melee attack, melee defense and that sort of thing. So for crappy zombies, they're not too shabby. But from here, I then claimed this settlement and cleaned up the rest of that Rapons army. I'm now at turn 50, so we're nearly at the end of our run. Just want to see if I can get a few more settlements from this, though. As I just took out one of the big Bretonnian armies, they're not going to have too many defenses left. There's one fairly big army there, but we're going to come up on that. They're going to bring another army over, but it's no use. I'm still going to give them a swift bonk-in on the head and take one of their strongest settlements. I think it may be where Rapons starts there, perhaps, or maybe she starts in Zandri, but it's one of her first provinces, I think. After this, on turn 49, I make a play to get the Great Desert of Araby, while sending my Strigoi zombie army north to capture Phyrus. And while I did have to fight this battle, it was actually quite fun, just massively enveloping a bunch of Bretonnians with zombies and scaring the shit out of them. Their low leadership, coupled with our fear and terror, plus all the flanking, made them go away pretty quick. And then on turn 50, we capture that Great Desert of Araby, and there we go. That'll do it. Turn 50. We managed to get all of this land, 5 or 6 provinces there. Managed to get some of the victory objectives done as well, taking out those 2 big factions that we did at the start. Got to take the Black Pyramid as well. That's easy enough to do. It's right there. We could overrun that with our 2 stacks. But to take a look at Mannfred himself, here's all his skill points. I haven't put a ton into the army anyway, only really to buff up the cheap crappy stuff. I do have that replenishment in the blue line as well, but otherwise trying to buff up Mannfred, which I am going to allow myself to do in the other playthrough. Here's all the items as well. These, again, I haven't done anything with these. They're just the ones that have got on, but I don't have anything terribly amazing. And here's the technology. I've researched a lot of stuff for those zombies to try and get those stronger, and then other bits and bobs that I thought might be helpful as I went along. And then, of course, there's the Raise Dead mechanic, which you've seen me use a bunch of times to get those zombies en masse, to get the stronger units that I otherwise couldn't get. We'll see how much of an effect it has not using that in the next run. For the Bloodlines, I ended up with 2 points from the Von Carsteins, which gave me the extra replenishment, which is mostly what I took them for. I tried to get my replenishment really good, so it was something that I would potentially miss in the other playthrough. I didn't bother with any of the books of Nagash, But there we go, that's how far I got up to turn 50, playing normally on very hard by the way. Now let's try again, but ignoring half of the mechanics of the game. So we start out the same, taking the first province, bish bash a biddly bosh. As mentioned, I am going to allow myself to upgrade my characters themselves, just so I can make use of my magic and such, and it's only going to be the single character, which might help a little bit with auto-resolve and stuff, but shouldn't make much of a difference. But here I am recruiting my units like a pleb, unable to use Raise Dead in this playthrough. I also, out of habit, keep opening the tech tree because I can see that exclamation mark there. But now, once again, I breathe down Volkmar's neck, and it's worth pointing out that this is going to be my second playthrough of the campaign, which means I have some experience in it and what works and what doesn't. As I found last time, splitting up my armies was a bad idea, so I'm not going to do that this time. But of course, it's worthwhile factoring that into the result of this playthrough. But once again, I raise my Strigoi zombie army, although it can't go up as quick this time because of no Raised Dead. But I still have managed to get some good units through my buildings. I've got some crypt horrors, got a corpse cart, and now not only can I not get as many zombies as I had before, but they're not going to be as strong because I'm not researching the technologies to buff them. So they're not going to get 20% physical resistance, any extra melee attack or melee defense. They're more expensive as well because I don't have that 35% reduction to upkeep. But this early in the campaign is not going to make a huge difference anyway. But as we move through the turn, the Cult of Sigmar comes at us with an army that's not too crazy scary, even though it's apparently going to crushingly defeat us. But we have a big numbers advantage, even though our units are half dead, although they're already dead, so double half dead, 1.5 times dead. Either way, we overrun them, disrupt their missiles, they do nothing, we crush them lovelily. Over the next turn, something different happens this turn though, as the ogres have declared war on me. They didn't do that last time, so that's an extra threat to worry about from the west this time. But funnily enough, the same thing that happened in the last playthrough happened in this one, where they come to attack my Strigoi army, I retreat, it leaves them stood in my attrition, and then free to attack. Which, when I do try to attack them, they both run off in different directions, separating themselves, making them easy pickings for the rest of my armies, to separate them, divide, and conquer. I'm then free to move on to Sudenburg and capture this area to try and finish off the Cult of Sigmar. But it's never that easy, of course, because now the Khemri have declared war on me, and it's the same thing again. They come after Kasabar. So I've got to try and finish up here quickly so I can get back over into the east before I start losing my settlements over there. So I get that done and start rushing Mannfred back over towards Kasabar, which is being besieged by the Khemri once again. But this time around, ogres, me lord. There's ogres to me north on me borders. So that's a bit of a worry and something I'm going to have to deal with. I don't really have a great army here to defend against it because I've mostly got zombies that aren't buffed in any way, so it's not a great situation. If only I had a mechanic that let me raise large numbers of troops very quickly. Scheiße. And things go from bad to worse as the Tomb Kings do attack me before I'm able to get back there. It's predicted a decisive defeat, which means I'll do no auto-resolve damage pretty much. So I'm going to fight it to get a better result and hopefully wipe out some of their units, making their army smaller, which is going to be easier for Mannfred to deal with and to prevent them from steamrolling onto any other of my settlements. And because they broke their army up into loads of small parts, it allowed me to pick apart a lot of those small parts and actually kill off quite a few of their units. I got rid of most of their ranged units, some of their melee units, and ultimately gave them a Pyrrhic victory rather than a decisive one, I think. But it was still a defeat, and they did decide to take Kasabar, which means I lost my main starting settlement, which means I lost one of my recruitment buildings and some other useful stuff. So far, things are a little bit worse than the first playthrough, I think, but nothing to do with the fact that I'm not using any of the mechanics, really, just some bad luck. But at this point I realize, hold up, I'm doing it again. I'm splitting up my forces when I should just be focusing on one. I've already lost Kasabar, so it doesn't really matter if the Tomb Kings are over there for a bit. Let's just get rid of these ogres nice and quick, and then I can head over to get the Khemri. So that's what I did. They were besieging us. We bonked them on the head. Now they're out of the way for now. We can rebuild the army and the garrison, and Big Man can go over and deal with the Khemri. Once we get back over there, we find the Khemri probably on their way to attack another one of my settlements, so we caught them before they do, thankfully. They've got a big chariot-heavy army, and I could get a Pyrrhic victory, but I want to be able to carry on and take back Kasabar after this, so I'm going to fight it, try and use all my strategy of taking the high ground so the chariots can't be as good here. They're very slowly going to have to go up the hill. They won't be able to charge us as well. They're going to have to fight uphill too, so lots of disadvantages that we can give them. Then it's just a case of flanking and overwhelming and just enveloping them as much as possible. Crypt Horrors being a key unit here, as they can stop those chariots charging around with their heavy mass and bash them with their armor-piercing damage. And that allows us to get rid of that Khemri army pretty comfortably. We lose a few skeletons, but that's no huge deal. We got our Crypt Horrors and stuff still in good health, enough to carry on and reclaim Kasabar at least. But of course, the Tomb Kings raise another massive stack and get it there before I can attack it, so I have to bring my zombie army over as well, but it's still not enough. And I start to notice something about this campaign different from the other one, is that I'm having to fight a lot more of my battles, whereas before I could get decent auto-resolve results and use that to get through the battles. I do end up fighting this siege though, so that my armies aren't completely destroyed afterwards. I say fight, what I really mean is cheese the victory objective, because the enemy's too stupid to come and take it back. But hey, maybe if they made sieges fun, I would actually want to play them. So I've reclaimed Kassabar, turn 21, I've got rid of the Cult of Sigmar, I now want to make my move to get rid of the Khemri. Last time I got this done by around turn 36, so we'll see if we can get it done at least before then. That gives us a good bit of time. So I move on to take the Spring of Eternal Life, which also gets rid of a nearby army as well. So hopefully we can take these first two settlements with little resistance. And just to give you a Mannfred update to show you, I'm not using any of the items, although occasionally they do sneak on like so, but I remove them as quickly as I see them. No skill points in the blue or red line other than the increase to campaign movement range, because, you know, not taking the increase to replenishment though, which would be really handy here. Anyway, on to Khemri we go, which does have the gold mine, a very nice place to take that extra money boost is very nice. But once again, we notice an unfavorable auto-resolve. So I'm going to take a turn or two of just wearing them down a bit. And this at least then gets me a close victory, allowing me to take Khemri. Very nice, I can just chill out now and replenish before I push on to take the last two settlements. I could use the money here, but I'm just going to take it. I don't feel like I have the time before another Khemri army arrives. And what do you know, there they are, about to go and take back one of the settlements I just took. So I rush back there, try to get rid of this army. It's in force march as well, so it's free for the taking. Get a close victory here. This is Settra himself once again. I'm going to fight it to not lose too many units, which I do. Lose a couple of zombies, but that's no big deal. I then send my Strigoi army onto Qatar to try and take that by himself, which he just about can with a Pyrrhic victory. He's got that extra hero in there, probably helping that. But once again, I decide to only sack this place because it's worth a nice little bit of money and I don't have a ton of it, so that's going to help me out. I'll go for the sack and finish it off on the next turn, hopefully. There is a big army nearby, but I've got my other stack ready. Said big army makes its moves towards Khemri, or maybe it's trying to get past Khemri, but either way, it's there in force march. It doesn't have a terribly good army, mostly crappy spearmen and some Nehekara warriors. So you know I got to go after it, and I'm able to get a close victory in the auto-resolve, which is nice. I'm not going to lose anything as well, so going to do that. And that should set up the end of the Khemri in this run. I push Mannfred on to take Nomas, but because I only sacked the other settlement, it allowed the Tomb Kings to raise a little army in the turn, and my Strigoi army wasn't able to deal with it, so I've got this little army here to deal with. My Strigoi boy has got to run away for now. But we'll come back with Mannfred, sort the Khemri out, and then that's them done for. Khemri destroyed. So here we are at turn 30, at the same point we were at turn 36 before, but as I said before, important to note that I did kind of know what I was doing on this playthrough a bit more than the first one, so we'll call it about even. I decide now though to head over and try to get after Bretonnia, because Skarbrand is all up in this area now, which he wasn't before, and I kind of don't want to get into a war with Skarbrand right now, so I'm going to avoid this area and actually start sailing out to try and get round Bretonnia down the southern coast, but the Rakaf dynasty then declares war on me, and I'm worried they're going to come after me, so I start to head back to deal with them instead. Lucky for me, they're also at war with Skarbrand at the same time, and they're besieging him with one of their armies, which leaves me free to go and swoop in and try to take one of their settlements. They do have a big army next to the settlement, so I do the old classic of besieging the settlement with the crappier army, which leaves the army outside the settlement vulnerable to being attacked and not reinforced by the settlement. So I attack it with my bigger army, scare them off, and then I'm able to take the settlement right there. After a little switcheroo of my armies, of course. But that takes away one of their settlements. They've only got two, so it's looking bleak for the Rakaf dynasty. It's almost like they shouldn't have declared war on me, a big large faction, when they were at war with another big large faction in Skarbrand. And what do you know, Skarbrand has actually raised their other settlement up, so that's free real estate for me. Now at turn 45, near the end, I aim to try and get roughly the same as what I got before, so I'm going after the Bretonians. Rapont occupies the nearby city. We're going to besiege that and give it the old chase-off of a nearby small army. But alas, it's still predicted as a close defeat, which is no good, so you know what's coming. Good old zombie army distracts while Mannfred sneaks in and takes the point. Just like in history, where once you've taken a small courtyard, you've got the entire city, really. Nice. I then, on turn 50 itself, push on to take Phyrus, and that is going to get me roughly to where I was in the first playthrough. So here we go. Let's compare what I've achieved, and what I have, and what I don't have. Mannfred's army, probably not as good as it was the first time, but it hasn't seemed to matter too much. No items on Mannfred, I've been taking them off all the time. No skill points spent in the blue and red lines, only on Mannfred himself. No technologies researched at all, so no gains from any of that. No bloodlines have been used, no replenishment gained this time. And of course, I haven't used any Raised Dead, which is why I don't have the better units like Graveguard Great Weapons and Blood Knights and Hex Wraiths. And in terms of actual landmass taken, it's about the same. A little bit less because Scarbrand came in and I didn't want to mess with him. The Great Desert of Araby, also a big piece of land, which maybe makes it look like I've taken way more than I actually have with that. And I don't have that this time as I am friendly with Archon, and he currently has that. Money-wise, I have 6 grand of income, 23 in the bank. That's probably because I don't have some of those better, more expensive units, but otherwise, pretty much the same as I had before. My provinces overall, though, are pretty underdeveloped, to be honest, because I expanded so quickly and it was kind of rushed. That was the same for both playthroughs. And I was able to achieve the same stuff in terms of victory objectives, and I felt like I could most definitely go on to win this campaign, although the long victory objectives are pretty ridiculous because you're supposed to go and take the entirety of the Empire lands, which is nowhere near you, so that's probably just kind of dumb to do, but there we go. Seemingly, Total War mechanics make no difference, at least up to turn 50. Now, you could make the point here that, well, it's only turn 50. As the campaign gets on, like to turn 100, 150, you're going to not have as many buffs. The AI is going to have loads of buffs. It may get harder and harder. You'd start to feel the difference more of not using the mechanics much later into the campaign. But to be honest, usually, if you think about it, when you reach turn 100, 150, you're usually kind of overpowered and start steamrolling everything anyway, and the campaign becomes boring because it's too easy. Maybe you would actually be more on the level that you should be if you didn't use any of the mechanics by turn 150. Who knows? I certainly am not going to try it, but it's an interesting thing to look at, I think. But my main point here is not to encourage you not to use the Total War mechanics, because obviously you should. But if you don't understand them, or you don't use them all the time, or you forget stuff, it doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it. As I said, I'm the laziest Total War player of them all. You can still win campaigns and win the game without all the fluffy mechanics. Maybe on Legendary it would be a bit of a different story and it might be a bit more essential, but there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel. And hey, you ever wondered what would happen if you merge Karl Franz with Genghis Khan? Well, let's find out. I'll see you in the future.